Hello, everybody. Welcome to Empowered Through Compassion. Welcome back. This episode is with Arielle Schwartz, and it is brought to you by BiTap. BiTap is a way to regulate your nervous system and feel calm again. It's a patented wearable device that taps for you, regulating your nervous system in real time, creating a steady state of calm and focus. It has been successfully used by parents, kids, frontline workers, professionals, therapists, counselors, school therapists, whether you're taking a test, whether you're working through trauma inside. BiTap is something that could help regulate your nervous system so that you can feel calm again and do the things that you want to be doing. You could wear them on your wrists, throw them in your pockets, wear them on your ankles. It's a quality product that I wanted to share with you. You could find out more information at bitap.com. That's BI-TAPP.com, COM. Thanks very much. And now here is our episode with Arielle Schwartz. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Empowered Through Compassion. Welcome back. It's so lovely that you are here. I am super excited today. I got Arielle Schwartz here, and we are going to have an incredible conversation. And I just feel really blessed for her to be here. I'm looking at her website right now, and I feel like this kind of, in some way, really shows who Arielle is and her spirit. But she has a quote from herself that says, "We adapt to adversary by orienting to our strengths, attending to our pain, and taking charge of the narrative that defines our lives." Beautiful is that? And really quickly, there's a lot I could say about her, but in a nutshell, Arielle Schwartz is a psychologist, internationally sought out teacher, yoga instructor, and leading voice in the healing of PTSD and complex trauma. She's the author of seven, soon to be eight books, including the Complex PTSD Workbook, EMDR Therapy and Somatic Psychology, Post Traumatic Growth Guidebook, and Therapeutic Yoga for Trauma Recovery. Um, Dr. Schwartz is an accomplished teacher who guides therapists in the application of EMDR, somatic psychology, parts work therapy, and mindful-based interventions for the treatment of trauma and complex PTSD. With all of that, Arielle, it is a pleasure to be sitting here with you.
Thank you, David. I'm thinking all of that was a mouthful, wasn't it?
It really was. I can't imagine what it would be like to actually do all that stuff and write all that stuff.
Thank you. It is a lot of fun, actually. I think that's probably been like maybe the defining feature of my career is I follow what feels fun and creative and passionate for me.
I love that. That's like the best kind of life philosophy, I feel. I have a bumper sticker that my wife and we went up to Ben and Jerry's years ago, and they had a bumper sticker that says, "If it's not fun, why do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm slapping that on my car."
That kind of encapsulates it. And I think actually I especially as someone who focuses on trauma recovery, it's heavy, it's profoundly painful. There's so much suffering that we relate to day with the people that we serve that to add in an element that broadens that lens or shifts the lens or reorients my attention and my client's attention to things that bring us joy and to things that ease that suffering, and whether it's the people, the allies that have been with us on the path, the places that have supported us, that has really helped me not burn out as a trauma focused clinician.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, I got a silly image that came to my head as you were talking. Um, I was just thinking, and I forgot what wise person said this. It might have been Melissa from Notice That. I'm not sure, but we were talking about somatics, and no, I think it was a YouTube video that I saw where there was this dog, and it had been abused, incredibly abused, and somebody found it and the dog was very, very skittish and didn't want to go to the person, and they loved it. You could tell they loved it, and they took it home. And then I think it was like weeks later where all of a sudden it was with another dog. It all of a sudden had the zoomies. And it was like the happiest thing. And like it was a tearful moment where like all of a sudden this dog that was so traumatized was all of a sudden able to just have like normal dog zoomies around the house. And the whole family was like thrilled. And I think about with trauma and the work that we do, when we're able to really help somebody to find some way within them to release that trauma, it's like, then what are we left with? Then we're left with the fun and the joy and the connection. And dare I say the zoomies?
I love it. You know, I've been a yoga teacher for over 30 years. Yoga has been in my life since I was about 6 or 7 years old, and so the majority of my life. And one of the things that I love about the yogic perspective on healing is that at our core we are already whole, and that the practices are very much there to remove the barriers that stand between us or that we have accumulated or life has accumulated upon us that prevent us from seeing our wholeness. And you can translate wholeness to joy or to compassion or to kindness, whatever you want to kind of house
Yeah.
in there that is generative and that is core to our nature. But of course, that's what trauma does, is it makes that cloudy and it's harder to feel or to sense in ourselves. It's harder for us to express that true nature in the world. And so it's not that we're in the process of healing, ever giving something to someone that they don't already have. We are helping them reclaim or rediscover or sense perhaps for the first time that core energy.
Yeah, that's so profound. And to me, and I know we're going to probably have a chance to dive into this. It was a real turning point late in my career where I kind of stumbled onto IFS, and I feel like that is what you're saying just aligns so well with self energy and the concept of self energy. And so
Yeah.
of course, for me, I'm like, yeah, I totally believe that. That feels so right, you know. And even as a counselor, it takes away a lot of the pressure where it's not like we have to have the answer. We have to know exactly what to say. We need to give our clients something. We need
Right.
to pretty much just have that faith, that belief, that core within ourselves, and that knowledge that, yeah, our clients have that core. How could we help them access that in some
Yeah.
way?
I think it's what Francine Shapiro was tapping into in EMDR as well, right? With adaptive information processing being the same thing that we're talking about, is that when given sufficient support, when EMDR is as much a mindfulness practice as it is a technique that involves bilateral stimulation, but at its core, it's really about tapping into that inner wisdom and also kind of maximizing on what supports us to tap into that inner wisdom, whether that is, interhemispheric communication in the brain, whether that's brain body connection, mind heart connection, that ultimately, when we feel safe enough, our mind is actually able to make the healing connections that is needed, and our bodies can unwind from that accumulative stress.
You just said a lot. That, yeah. And now the question, right? The challenge is how do we do that? How do we help somebody to access that power within them
Mhm.
when it has been layered upon layered with different traumatic environmental factors, things that have happened in their life? How do we kind of reach that core within them or help them to reach that core so that they could really feel like, yeah, I have healing power within myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that how is such a key question, especially because so many of the people that we work with, that we sit with, are orienting to a fixed notion of self. And I think what we're speaking about, whether it's self energy or AIP, adaptive information
Yeah.
processing, or the yogic nature of wholeness, what we're speaking about is not something that's fixed. we're speaking about the willingness to reside in a malleable or a psychological flexibility that allows us to trust the change process, that allows us to not have to cling or hold on to the idea of who we are based on what has happened to us, what we've been told about ourselves, what we've accumulated as beliefs about ourselves. And the more that we repeat those experiences, especially the ones that had negative impact, the more that we adhere, in a sense, to that fixed nature of I'm wounded, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, I'm not enough, I'm too much. And what we're attempting to facilitate as part of a change process is a willingness to suspend what is known in service of this possible new emerging self that can arrive in its place. But we have to find that worthy pause. Otherwise, we will just loop inside of what has been known. We will repeat that again and again and again. And look, we all do it. I do it. It is human nature to repeat what is known because it's easier for the brain. It helps us survive, right? If we know there's a saber-toothed tiger in that, in that woods, we're
A
going
damn
to go in
saber-toothed
prepared,
tiger.
right? Like, yeah, exactly. The one that always keeps showing up, at least in the trauma conversation. But like, we want to be able to know how to protect ourselves. And that's the function of memory, and we use it to try and predict the future. And if it's all that we use to try and predict the future, we actually recapitulate or revisit the past in rather than creating a new future. So we're helping, this question of how is, we're helping create enough trust to temporarily suspend what we know in service of allowing something new to emerge.
Yeah. So you again, you're so wise. There was a couple of things. I'll tell you both what's going on in my head, and the multiplicity of my mind. One is the worthy pause, which I was like, "Oh, I want to ask you about that." Well, maybe we could just start with that, and then I'll remember what it was. But to kind of go back to that, finding the worthy pause, that's really interesting. I haven't heard that before. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I often, when I'm teaching this to clinicians, I refer to it as spacious relational awareness. That sometimes we're sitting with clients and they're jumping into narrative and they're just off to the races, and we're just like, okay, well, we're on the well-worn track and we can feel it when it's happening, and they may or may not sense that they're in that well-worn groove. And so the spacious relational awareness is the invitation to say, is it okay if I pause you or invite you to pause with what you're sharing with me right now? It's important. I want to hear everything you have to say. And I noticed. Or,
Mm,
and what's happening for you right now? Can you sense what's happening in your body? So and I choose those worthy pauses at moments where I sense something is happening underneath the surface, right? The
mm,
narrative is running, but maybe there is a nervous system shift that I track where suddenly there's this
yeah.
heaviness in the room, or the narrative is running, but all of a sudden my heart is going so fast in my chest. Or we can, or there's a gesture, or they're telling the narrative but their gaze goes downcast, and or they shrug their shoulders. It can be subtle or not so subtle shifts that occur, and we want to grab hold of those shifts. Maybe we notice that there's a wave of sadness that went across their face, or suddenly you as the clinician feel a little sad as you sit with them.
Mm, mm,
And those are all these cues that, for me, with my background in somatics, that we're really trying to trace, like something just happened there. Would you be willing to just be with that for a moment and see what you're noticing? And if they kind of go, I don't know, or they want to jump back to narrative, I might invite just a little bit of a longer lingering in there. What
Yeah.
just happened for me when you said that part of the story was that I just felt this wave of sadness in my heart, or I noticed that suddenly your face changed. And so we're using this relational exchange as a
Mm.
way to catch hold of the subtle shifts that invite our clients to drop below narrative to know what's happening inside. And we might catch those moments both as, for example, a moment of sadness, a moment of fear, a moment of shock in the system, whatever that is. But we can also catch them where we're like, oh, there was such a sweet smile when you shared that, right?
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, that just felt so much lighter when you shifted right there. Can you feel that? So we can invite the sensing into the process.
Oh, hold on one second. I apologize. I'm gonna shut my window because I'm gonna have a bunch of happy elementary school kids running down the block, which is
Oh, that
great,
was
but I want to.
yes. Yeah. And honestly, you can like leave all of that in there because we can all imagine for a moment happy elementary kids running down the street. And it's kind of like a perfect moment of just being like, oh yeah, there might be really hard things happening in the world, but there's still in some places in the world, many places in the world, happy little third and fourth graders running down the street with their little backpacks, wiggling around, laughing, telling jokes. You want to come to my house and play? What do you have for snack at your house, right? And it's such a sweetness.
It really is. All right, I'm going to try to make you smile, try to make the audience smile here just for a moment. I remember when I was in school, I was a guidance counselor, and there was a second grader, and you know, just imagine like the second grader, how innocent they are. And the teacher came into my office and was like, "Oh my God, you never guess what this boy did." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "He's he's skipping into my classroom with his backpack on, singing, 'Let's get this party started.' Let's get this." You're
Is
right. You're right.
beautiful. It's so beautiful. Exactly. Like, oh my gosh, in second grade to have that feeling that school is still a party. And I'm going to get to go be with my friends all day. And
Right.
I get to go learn something. How special.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and if only we could, kind of take off enough layers that we could start our day in that same kind of mindset and heart set where we're just skipping to work on, let's get this party started.
Sometimes I feel that way. I try and feel that way about it all. Today I went to my early morning workout. This is like, good self-care and my alarm goes off at 6:30. I press snooze for the first 9 minute snooze on my phone and then it goes off again and I go, "Okay, let's get this party started." Like I knew that I would feel good if I actually got there. I don't know that I said exactly those words, but that's the feeling. And man, if we can set up, I mean, I'm really speaking to all of us as clinicians out there, if we can actually live our lives in that manner, our clients feel it. Our clients
Oh
feel that
yeah.
we are indeed excited to go to work, excited to see them, excited because we've taken care of ourselves in the morning or whatever we do or whatever we have in the evenings, that that work isn't all heavy or burdensome to us so that we actually are showing up, whether you call it self energy or wholeness or joy or right, fill in the blank, we're showing up with our own psychological flexibility and adaptive information processing.
Oh man, again, I got so many thoughts. Yeah, it's like so the two thoughts. One is we're showing up and I'd imagine there's some co-regulation there. Like if you come in and you're just super happy and then you have somebody that's really in a down place, that happiness is could be contagious in a way. And then when you're talking about flexibility, what I keep thinking of is one of my many heroes, Bruce Lee, when he says just be like water. And I'm like, yeah, you just got to be like water and have that just complete flexibility. Whether it's with the polyvagal theory, whether it's with, the client sitting in front of you, but having that flexibility and helping harness that flexibility just has so much power in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings to mind something specific to polyvagal theory, as you name it. And I talk about this a lot in the Therapeutic Yoga for Trauma, as well as my Applied Polyvagal Theory and Yoga books. And the um, or that really what we're looking at there is this quality of nervous system flexibility. That sometimes with trauma, very often with trauma, we get stuck in nervous system states, either in that sympathetic fight flight, we're on the go, we're on guard, we're vigilant, or we get stuck in shutdown, hopelessness, despair, hypoarousal. What's the point? Nothing's going to make a difference. And so, what we want to catch is that we can actually recognize that those psychological qualities, whether it's anxiety or depression, are manifestations of nervous system states. And if we're stuck in sympathetic or if we're stuck in parasympathetic, we have lost this nervous system flexibility, which is a sign of health that we can move between nervous system states with fluidity, like water, right? That we can move between that alertness and that readiness and that capacity to move and play and feel excitement and be that little fourth grader walking down the street or jumping in, skipping into class at second grade. But we can also sleep well at night or meditate or rest in stillness or drop into calmness without rolling over into collapse. And so I love looking through the lens of the nervous system and recognizing that the majority of our mental health symptoms are manifestations of imbalances in the autonomic nervous system. It's depathologizing to view it that way, and it
Yeah.
also empowers us because there are practices that we can do, whether it's changing how you breathe, working with your posture, gentle movement, that actually are intervening at the level of the nervous system so that you can reclaim that nervous system flexibility.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna throw in a whopper here.
Give it to me.
What you just said, I so agree with. Like, yeah, I couldn't agree with it more. And even in my own practice after the MDR, like just learning about polyvagal and applying it clunkily to my knowledge was super, super helpful. And what I've been grappling with in my brain is how to take what you said and the wisdom there and apply it to parts work and like IFS, and how the two of them could kind of reach a point of understanding what you're saying through like a parts language.
Absolutely. Right. Like if we look at just something like window of tolerance, right, which I think is a relatively common frame that many of us who work with trauma, whether it's through the EMDR, through the somatic, through IFS, um, through the different lenses of trauma work, we have a certain common ground there of recognizing that when we're in the window, we're able to capaciously respond, effectively respond to our emotions and our mental states. When we're above the window, we're in more of that sympathetic, and when we're below, we're in more of that parasympathetic. So anytime we're out of the window, we're in a part.
Mm.
When we're in self energy, we're in that window. And that window could be translated as ventral vagal if we use polyvagal language, right? It's this
Sure.
ability to kind of flexibly adapt and adjust to our circumstances, to be able to upregulate or downregulate as needed to really stay present. Um, or to rest, right? Whatever's needed. And that if we're out of our window and we don't know how to manage anxiety or hopelessness and despair when it takes over, then we're getting pulled into a part that doesn't have that we can think of all the eight C's and the
Yeah, yeah,
five
yeah,
P's,
yeah.
all of,
Yeah.
that presence, that compassion, that clarity, right? All of that really lives within ventral vagal or self energy or in the window.
So are you saying, I think you're saying this, which is really cool and revolutionary. Are you saying that like if we do yoga, a yoga practice, what we're really doing is in that moment kind of this fast train towards self energy in a way, like we're just going right into that place and trying to just, whatever's going on with our parts, trying to just feel some of that self energy.
Ideally, I would say that, but I also just have to say that yoga is one path and it's not the only path, and it's a
Yeah.
path that works
Yeah.
for me, right? And that, so long as you're in a class that feels like you've got choice, that you feel that it resonates with you, because there's a whole range of what quote unquote yoga looks like, especially in the US and probably around the world too. But sometimes people approach yoga with like a real aggression or, um,
Yeah, it's
uh,
more like a workout than it is kind of a relaxing into it.
Yes. So even yoga can evoke a perfectionist part. Even yoga can evoke a protector, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go in with that workout agenda, but not necessarily as
Yeah.
a calm,
Yeah.
compassionate way of relating to oneself. So, people sometimes ask me, what does IFS look like on the yoga mat? And it looks like meeting yourself where you are with love.
Mm.
It looks like rolling out the mat and showing up and asking yourself, what do I need today? And responding in a way that really matches the energy. So you're not going to make some part of you, if I use that language, that's in sympathetic aggression, frustration, irritability wrong. You bring that with you to the mat and then you explore how can the yoga practice support you to be mindful with that
Yeah.
experience.
I love
Maybe
that.
you need to do a lion's breath and go, ah, right, and roar, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't harm you, it doesn't harm anyone else, it moves that energy. And then on the other side of that, right, you might catch the wave of a little bit of a release or a relief or some tears come. Oh, wow, that really matched a feeling I had. Maybe
Mm.
you want to go into a warrior pose and really feel that strength, right? Maybe you drop into a child's pose and just let yourself get really small on the mat
Mm.
and feel so held as you go into that contraction. Too often in the world, and I think too often in therapy, mind you, we feel like we just have to kind of sit and obediently sit still and um and that's a way of respecting ourselves and others. But when you really check in with, as I'll borrow from Mary Oliver, the soft animal of your body and allow it to love what it loves, does your body really want to sit right now? I did, I had this beautiful session yesterday with a client where she had a lot of grief at the beginning of the session and then kind of spoke about this vision of her kind of inner child, if you want to use just, some basic language here, this young part of her. And I'll tell you, we've worked together for years and she has wanted to push away, deny, reject, felt repulsed towards that inner child because that's how that child was treated growing up by her family
Yeah.
of origin. And she perpetuates that entire inside of herself. No blame, right? This is what we do as humans. We repeat what we know. And then there was this moment in which she wanted to pick up that child part and hold her up to the light and see
Wow.
and give that part of her what had never been given. And as she was doing this image seated, I said, do you want to stand up and just really embody that, right? And together, the two of us stand up and she scoops down and she picks her up and she holds her up. And there's this beautiful shape with her body as she's gazing upward. And then she brings her down and she brings her to her heart and her hands are over her heart.
Mm.
And it was this embodiment of the parts work. You could call it yoga, you could call it somatics, right? But it was stunning. At that
Wow.
point, tears of grief roll over into tears of gratitude.
Wow. I mean, it's really amazing because what I've been learning with this world of trauma, therapy is that memories and you know, things that have happened to us, it really is like Besser Van der Kolk says, it's all about the body. It's all the memory is in the body. The energy is held by the body. And it just makes me a little bit kind of sad and hopeful that like, wouldn't it be great if we had graduate schools that one really saw trauma as the pivotal, element of what's going on with people who are struggling? And then would it teach graduate students so much more about the body and the stuff that you're involved with whether yoga, breathing, however we import it, but just the somatics is such a key piece that is really I don't think completely there in the field yet.
Not yet. It's funny because in 1994, I graduated from my undergrad.
Hmm.
And I had been introduced to somatics in about 1993 I went to Oberlin in undergrad in Ohio, and it's a rather progressive school, and they had a really fantastic dance department, and the dance
Huh.
department brought in a workshop in body mind centering, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen's work. And in fact, small world moment, the woman that came in to teach our workshop happens to be the aunt of a dear friend of mine, and I'm having dinner with her tomorrow,
Wow.
with the aunt and the friend. And we made that connection last year. I was like, "You're the one that introduced me to all of this way back when." How cool is that? But anyhow, she changed my life, right? She brings in, I am 20 years old. I'm in this workshop in body mind centering. We're rolling on the floor. We're relearning how to crawl. We're turning our heads. It's like a little bit of Feldenkrais meets yoga meets somatics meets therapy. And that particular workshop opened up so much, both grief but also possibility, like, oh
Wow.
wow, there's something at the edge of this that's uncomfortable, but helping me sense that there's a different way of being in the world. And after that, I wanted to know everything I could about somatic psychology, about somatics.
Wow.
So I was researching 1994, and I found three schools in the country, this is just in the US, three schools that had master's degrees in somatics.
Now, is Haikomi part of that, or was this separate from Hakomi?
Hakomi is very related to all of this. In fact, Hakomi was well integrated into my master's degree program, but I ended up at Naropa University, which was one of those three schools, which is what brought me here to Boulder, Colorado. And so, in a sense, I got very lucky that I did get to do my master's degree in graduate level psychology in a somatics program. It was 3 years of crawling on the floor. Like being a little facetious, but not 100%. Like we did a lot of that and a lot of embodiment practice. And you're right, like the world of psychology, the field of psychology has really resisted somatics, has been afraid of the body, afraid that somehow if we bring the body into the center stage of healing, that somehow we'll ethically end up in all of these hot messes. But actually, the more that we deny our body, that's where we end up getting into the problems, right? So
Yeah.
that if we actually can wisely embody and integrate felt sense, we have a much greater wisdom path toward healing. So I felt incredibly lucky that I got to do a master's in somatics for 3 years. Then
Hmm.
I went back to school to do my doctorate, and I had an APA accredited program, all the bells and whistles that I wanted in terms of professional accreditation. And I also was able to do my doctoral dissertation research on the integration of mind body therapies into
Oh,
clinical practice. So I really envision myself as a bridge between these fields. And I've been, involved in bridging and teaching mind body therapies for clinicians and how to bring somatic into EMDR, how to bring yoga and polyvagal together. And my work has been a synthesizer of mind and body for, I guess about 30 years now.
yeah. I just that's so amazing. I love that. I mean, the work that you're doing is just it's changing the field.
That's my hope. That's my goal.
Yeah. I don't know if this is too general or basic question, but because you're saying it all, right? But what's going on inside of me is what do you feel has been the biggest way that you have been able to change the field?
I'm certainly going to return to two things that we've already named. One is that bridging, that capacity to engage my own scientific, critical thinking mind, right? That really can look at research with that critical eye, can look at how we do things like empirically validated, evidence-based research, and to also kind of question whether all of that is as valuable to our field as we'd like to think it is, because there has to be a certain amount of distilling down, protocolizing therapy, manualizing therapy in order to test its efficacy. But the problem with that kind of approach to research on clinical efficacy, as I think you and I both know, is that when you actually get into the clinical room, a protocol doesn't always meet a person. So we have to
Yeah.
be able to adapt and be flexible ourselves to really know how to help someone feel heard, validated, understood, all of that beautiful Rogerian, you know,
Yeah.
baseline of, compassionate, unconditional, positive regard, all of that good stuff that if we don't have that, a protocol is just not going to hold water. And so, I think it's the bridging between being able to recognize the value and to speak the language of, something that allows me to speak to members of APA and get my coursework accredited for teaching mind body approaches to healing. And be able to look through the lens of the polyvagal theory, look through the lens of the nervous system, and in terms of just that question of influence and impact on the field, I feel like the other side of it comes back to joy. It comes back to following the me that wants to skip into the classroom, the me that loves
What?
to share my heart with the world. I've been teaching therapeutic yoga for trauma for, I want to say, a gazillion years, but it's probably not that long. But 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 since, officially since 2008, but going way back, I've taught in IOPs, in mental health centers. I taught in residential treatment centers for adolescents, going all the way back to the 1990s. So I've been bringing yoga into mental health for many years
Wow. Wow.
because it makes me happy, because I skip into that classroom. And so when you ask about like biggest influence on the field, one is for the clinicians and the influence of being able to be, offer these bridging and validate through how I teach. And the second is the influence that I have on the layperson, on the client, on humanity, which is when, for example, when COVID hit and I took those classes online, suddenly I'm having 400 or 500 people from around the world sign
Oh,
up for a yoga class that's mental health informed, trauma informed, and it built this incredible community that still to this day meets online.
wow.
And people come together, therapists, clients, humans, right? We
Yeah.
all come together and we share our hearts and we heal and we move and we breathe, and it's stunning.
It's beautiful. And that's powerful too. So I was wondering, and thank you for that answer. That's a perfect answer. I was wondering with kind of the other side of the coin in a way. And you're tapping into this of like you do something special, and I think we all have something special that we're offering, whether it's yoga, IFS, EMDR, and countless other things. I've been grappling with how do you get that to reach as many people as we can? What is that kind of way that we can get the voices out there or people heard so that somebody who this isn't part of, their world every day, they're able to somehow tap in and see like, oh, this stuff that they're talking about, maybe it can relate to me. Maybe it can help me. Maybe there's some hope there, for change to happen. And I'm wondering, again, you're kind of saying this already, but how do you feel the best way to kind of put out that message in a way that people who need it most could really hear that?
Mhm.
What is the way to do that?
Yeah. I think that we need to go through, in a sense, all of the channels, and I don't just mean social media channels, although they're not a bad route to go. But I think we really do need to go through all the channels because we have different learners in the world, some of whom are going to need a 30-second video on TikTok to really hear something, some of whom are going to be really benefiting from reading, whether it's a blog or a book, some of whom are going to benefit through an embodiment experience by joining a class or taking a class on YouTube. And so knowing that we can actually have impact, not just in the one-on-one arena of the therapy room, but that when you find, and I'm just speaking to all of us, that, anyone here listening, when you find what your passion is, what you want to give to the world, give it in a variety of different ways. And sometimes I always use, I use that image of like, let's throw it all against the wall and see what sticks, right? Like see what sticks out there. And, whether you love to run groups, put the flyers up there. Let it be known that you're starting a group, whether it's on Zoom or in person in your community, and see who starts to come and resonate with what you have to give. And when you're going out there with your passion, with your self energy, with your joy, people will be drawn to that because they see that it's lighting you up.
Yeah, I love that. And you're not going to burn out if you're enjoying it and you're having fun. And the other thing that I found, in addition to what you're saying, which is super important, is it's just the consistency, right?
Mhm.
Like do it and don't give up. You know you have something, you're having fun, keep doing it. Show up, show up, show up. Eventually they'll come. People
That's
will
so
come.
true. It's so true. I can't tell you how many times in earlier times in my career, showed up to teach a class to one person or two people or three people. And it goes back to the starfish on the beach story, right? Which many of
Yes,
us have
yes.
heard. Like, why would you keep doing that? Well, it helped that one. And so, it was really never about the numbers. Like, it's pretty awesome to see that sometimes 400 people will sign up for a therapeutic yoga class. How amazing. But I would show up if two people showed up or one person shows up because it's impactful and it's meaningful. And I still do one-on-one clinical work and I do teaching to tens of thousands of people. And I love the range. I really do love the range. But I think what you said is so important. When I first started writing a blog, I'm like, I'm not sure if anybody's going to read it, but I'm going to write it anyway because the writing of it makes me happy. And lo and behold, one of those that I threw on the wall stuck, and then it started to get 1,000 views a day. Okay, well, that
Wow.
one grabbed hold of the interest. At some point, I had a publisher reach out to me saying, "Hey, we noticed that your blog is getting a lot of traction. Would you like to work with us to write a book?" Oh, I didn't even think of myself as a book author, but it generated a process.
Yeah, by just starting the motion and keeping that motion up, then who knows where it's going to lead, but you're moving towards something, and there feels like there's a flexibility in that, or as long as there is a flexibility in that, something is going to come out of that, I
Mhm.
believe.
I agree. I agree. And I think it's about not being wedded to the one thing I put out there being the one that's going to have to work, right? Like it's like, oh, wait, this part of it worked. This needs some refinement. And I'm going to actually allow myself to be open to that feedback and refine and listen. And sometimes that feedback is from the inside, like, ooh, that didn't feel quite right for me. I want to refine what my offering so that it feels better.
Yeah. How could people find you? Like if they want to, find what you're doing, what you're involved with, what would be the best way to find, how to connect with you if they want to?
Great. I appreciate you asking that, and I love to stay in touch with folks. I think it's there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways. So here's how you can find me. You can find me at drarielleschwartz.com. You can find me at Dr. Arielle Schwartz on YouTube. You can take live yoga classes with me because I'm still teaching them, and they're for everybody. And you can find out about that on my website or on the YouTube channel. And I'm on Facebook at Dr. Arielle Schwartz, Instagram Arielle Schwartz Boulder, and I teach a lot of classes on everything that we're talking about with Embody Lab and PESI and groups around the world. So
Well,
yeah,
Ariel, you are amazing, and thank you so much for being here and talking.
thank you for having me.